All right. Hello and welcome to this episode today where we're going to start a new series on common OCD and anxiety mistakes and what to do about them. And specifically today, we're going to talk about not prioritizing recovery. So, for those of you who are new to the show, my name is Matt Cotty, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and the founder of Restored Minds. And really this show is about, just helping people take their life back from OCD and anxiety. So when we do that through a variety of ways, through education, as well as, like in this series, talking about common mistakes and roadblocks and introducing skills that are actually going to help you break out of that wheel and really reclaim control of your life. So before we dive into the show, please help show your support by liking and subscribing. And if you're joining us on YouTube, please, hit the notification tab as well as leave a comment. And if you're joining us via podcast, please leave us a review if you would be kind enough to do so on either iTunes or Spotify or both, as all of that helps the algorithms of the show and helps us get this information to people that need it. So let's go ahead and talk about today, the mistake, I should say, in a common roadblock that I see people run into, where they don't prioritize their recovery. So one of the interesting things about fear is, fear is really a controlling force, right? And one of the things that inspired this this series is I'm just wrapping up a book by Napoleon Hill called Outwitting the Devil. It's a fascinating read. Little backstory on it, and it's not necessarily important, but Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich, and that was probably one of his his most famous work. And then right after that, he wrote this book, and actually he believed it was going to be so controversial that he didn't want it published in his lifetime, and neither did his wife. So this manuscript kind of stayed just in their records until after he and his wife's death, in which the family released it. Long story short is the book is about him having this conversation with quote unquote the devil, and you can kind of interpret what that means, if you will, when you read the book. But at the end of the day, one of the big conversations is fear, and what the devil reveals in the and again, this could be more of like the dark part of your mind. It could be like the actual literal devil, right? I don't want you to get caught up on this particular concept. It's more just the power of fear is really what I wanted to talk about. And fear is a very powerful force. And really we have kind of two choices in life, right? We can live by faith or live by fear. Now, and this isn't about necessarily a specific religious practice as much as it's about like having faith in something, right? Something beyond yourself, something beyond your mind. And some people call it the subconscious, some people call it infinite intelligence, some people call it God, some people call it source, some people call it the universe, whatever it is. When you are able to have faith in something beyond yourself, it enables you to tap into a power source that's very, very great. Whereas the mind, has its limitations. And if all you have is faith in your mind, then you're always going to look for the mind for the answer. And paradoxically, it's going to create a lot more problems, in my experience. And, that's just been what I've seen. So one of the things that fear does is it has a great way of always getting you to put off facing fear. And it always will convince you that now's not a good time to address this, right? Now is just not the time for whatever reason, right? It always has a good reason, quote unquote, because it has this unlimited resource of the future to always put it off towards, right? So if, let's say today's Monday when I'm recording this, for whatever reason, now just isn't the day to address this. So, maybe I'll call on the weekend because I'm not working, or, hey, I need to work out first, or I need to do this. And it always has this excuse of why you shouldn't address it now. And I mean, if you're like me, I mean, I know that, that's definitely been something that I've experienced. And most people will reports something to the similar, right? Is that one of the ways fear stays in control in your life is it deprioritizes addressing fear. It's brilliant, right? Because as long as you can tell yourself that you'll address it one day, then you'll put it off. And the interesting thing is, that old saying, tomorrow never comes, right? There's a famous, I read of a famous a sign that was in a bar one time that always said, hey, free beer tomorrow. And every time you came in, it was tomorrow, right? So it never happened. And that's the same kind of thing here. Like, as long as you're planning to face your fears tomorrow, there's overwhelming probability that tomorrow will never come. And for those of you that have been dealing with this for any length of time, you've probably told yourself that, I'll address it when, and then you have a certain thing. And then, it just kind of keeps getting pushed off, right, to the future. And we have this unlimited resource of time that we can bank in the future of when we'll do the things we want to do. The issue is we don't have unlimited time for our life, right? That has a very finite time, a beginning and end. And if we bank in the future, chances are we just might keep doing that until the very last day of our life, whenever that is. And this is why, not prioritizing recovery is such an issue, because it allows fear to stay in control. And one of the interesting things too about fear is that it will give you the illusion that you're in control, when really fear is what's driving the situation. So, and this applies to any fear, right? So when we're talking about anxiety, phobias, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter what the diagnosis we try to throw on it. If fear, the energy of fear, right, is what's driving your decision, fear is in control, because fear causes you to operate in some of like your lowest respects, right, as a human. And that's why I talk about like that lens of fear. Like, when you're seeing through the world through fear, you're not really seeing the world how it is. You're seeing it as the way the fear distorts it for you, right? And the problem with OCD and anxiety is as long as we're in that lens of fear, oftentimes we're not even aware that we're living by fear. We're convinced we're thinking logically sometimes. And many of us can look back in our past and like, literally go ahead and like, just a thought experiment, look back in your past and kind of ask yourself like, hey, like when I was really afraid of that thing, whatever it was, when I was really in that state of fear and I was making those decisions based out of fear, did I actually make good decisions? Because in the past, we can see it really clearly. In the present, we can't see it clearly. So the past can be our friend for this, because we can really be like, okay, hey, when I was really afraid of that thing and I was trying to control those people or get reassurance or avoid those things, like, was that good? Was it a good use of my time to ruminate about that for hours and hours and hours? And the answer is, if you always go back to that, you can always look at it and transparently look at it and say, no, it was generally never good, because no matter what, when you're operating out of fear, you're operating out of your lowest state. There's always a better way to operate out of something and to navigate a situation than using fear as the driving force. Fear causes you to contract. It causes the idea of scarcity. It causes the idea of, that fight or flight. So you get very reactive, often say things that hurt people, do things that hurt people, all that stuff. So that's the point when we're talking about prioritizing recovery. Like, one of the two tricks that fear uses is it convinces you again that you always have time in the future, so don't do it today. And also you're oftentimes very unaware when fear is in control, and you'll convince yourself that it's really like that you're logically making these decisions. I've seen people do all sorts of wild compulsions in the name of logic, right? Like, whether it's logical to take 3-hour showers or, all these different things. So prioritizing recovery is important because it's the only way you can really be free, right? I mean, if we're really just being transparent, that's what taking back control is about, is like, when you're living your life and it's directed by fear, it creates a very limiting experience in this world, right? In this life, right? That's what fear does. It limits you. It creates constrictions, it confines you, right? It says, oh, these areas are now off limits. And it damages your relationships. It damages you pursuing things you really want to in life. I mean, just to name a few, right? I mean, it's not really that hard to make an argument that fear restricts your life. And this is why when you don't prioritize it, you allow fear to stay in the driver's seat. And then eventually, like I said, tomorrow never comes. And all of a sudden it's been a year, and it's been 3 years, and it's been a decade and 30 years. And fear's just kind of stayed in that driver's seat. So prioritizing recovery means it's you understand this is an issue, and you really make that commitment that I need to address this. And, I've just seen, and I know for myself, I did this big time, right? And when I was really stuck in my own fear loops, is I didn't prioritize it, and so there's several ways that I wouldn't prioritize it. And there's several things I did, that maybe you can relate to. One of the things that I did was I always thought I needed to learn more, right? I just thought well, if I just keep reading and, learning more and, doing videos and podcasts and conferences and stuff, as long as I keep learning, I'll eventually just figure it out. Learning is staying on the sideline, right? You're never going to outlearn this to the point of not having to do the work that's required of you. It's the same way as if I just keep learning about business, all of a sudden I'll just have a successful business one day. It's no, eventually you got to take what you learn and apply it. Right. So that's a big way that I've seen people kind of stay on the sideline and actually convince themselves they're doing something when really, the work is right in front of them. It needs to be done. And when it comes to this idea of prioritizing your recovery, it means that it needs to be put in front of other things in your life for a temporary period of time, at least. So a lot of people will hide behind all these things in their life and say, well, I can't because work or, and I'm not saying that you need to do any radical things here, but we have our responsibilities in life. But the problem is that fear is bleeding into all those areas of our life. And so if we don't address the fear, it's going to damage those areas of our life. So our families, our work, responsibilities, all that stuff is those aren't reasons not to do this. Those are reasons to do this because we can't let the fear take over there. And what prioritizing recovery really means is saying this needs to be my top concern. I need to be working at this every day. I need to be learning and applying the skills I need to break free from the grips of fear wherever it is in my life. And the more and more we work towards it and prioritize it daily and start putting in habits like AAA response that are going to really help break fear, break the grips of fear from our life, that's when we truly get to live free. And then that actually enriches all the other areas of our life. So one of the things that I know kept me stuck again for a long time, and the reason I'm making this series is just kind of reflecting back on my own journey, as well as many things I discuss with my clients, people in the TBC program, and if you're interested in that, obviously we have some resources down in the notes. So we have, our book, our workshop, and you can apply, for our TBC program as well. I just can't stress how different my life is when I was stuck in the loop of fear and when I'm not. And for a long time, I stayed stuck, and one of the main things was simply because I just didn't want to prioritize it. One of the reasons was because I was afraid of facing fear. I was afraid of being afraid. And if I could do little things to distract myself or avoid things, it's that felt better that day. But what it didn't do was get me better in the long run. And that's where you have to start choosing your long-term health over your short-term comfort today. Those choices are everything on this journey. And that's why, making this commitment to prioritize whatever that means to you. And I'm not telling you what that means to you because I mean, just deep down, whether that means like actually enroll, and we'll talk about in the next episode, the lone wolf approach, which is the route I went, which was another big hurdle. And we'll talk about why it's so important to get guidance from people that really understand what they're doing, because, the lone wolf route was just a huge thing that kept me stuck as well. So, but today I just want to talk about the idea of making it a priority. And when you think about when you make things priority in life, they happen. When you say like, whatever it is, like if work is your priority, like you show up, right? If your family is your priority, like you're there, you're doing what you need to do. Recovery needs to become a priority to you. It needs to say, this is a very important thing. And it needs to be part of your daily experience, because if it's not, fear is going to continue to run the show in the background, and you'll convince yourself that you'll do it one day, or you'll convince yourself that you're really just being logical, when really that fear's running the show. Breaking grips of that OCD and anxiety loop, or breaking the loop and breaking the grips that it has on your life, once it becomes a priority, is when you start making it happen. So that was a big, mistake that I made, a big common mistake that I see many people make. And so one of the things, the real message of this episode is just make this a priority. Like it has to become a priority in your life for it to happen. So hope this was helpful. And again, if you're looking for resources and help, we have some links down in the notes where you can get started. You can also head over to restoredminds.com. And then we have several ways to get started there as well. With all that said, we appreciate your support, and we thank you for hanging out with us as always today, because we know you have a lot of options. So we just thank you for giving us your time and energy today. And with that, I wish you guys a great week, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Hey there, hope you enjoyed that recent video. We really would appreciate your support real quick if you could like and subscribe to our channel. And if you're looking for help with OCD and anxiety, please check out the links below or visit restoredminds.com, as we'd be happy to help you on your journey. Thanks so much.